Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In episode 245, we preview the Detroit Lions Week 17 matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. A game that looks a little bit different than expected just a few days ago. We'll talk about what to expect and hear from a reporter who covers the Vikings. We'll get to all of that and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, a former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's a scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, as usual, we're happy it's a short week for this one.
Yes, we are. And I wish I had some of those Billy Sims ribs to eat, but you guys have already eaten all, so don't worry about it.
Oh, that's okay. I think James might have one more left for you. And I said, as usual, it's as usual good to have you here. Joining both of us is the guy with some Billy Sims ribs from Billy Sims Barbecue. That is the sports writer of the year from Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated, senior sports writer for Traverse City Record Eagle, James Cook. James, good to have you back here so quickly.
Thanks for having me on here. Hopefully the people that are staying in our rental aren't audible right now because it sounds really loud to me.
All right. Well, we're not picking them up yet, but we'll see what happens on the final editing process. Folks, we want to let you know our show is brought to you by our friends at Roaster Jack Coffee Company. They've been doing this for like 25 years, which is roasting premium beans from small farms around the world, fresh to order just for you. The only thing better than great coffee is great coffee with a discount. So go to roasterjack.com, use the code LIONS, you get 20% off your order. All right. Any major storylines, reactions from last week? Again, it's a real short week, so we're doing a quick turnaround. I think the biggest news, one of the things we didn't talk about, is something that affected a Lions fan and a Pittsburgh Steelers player, James, and that was DK Metcalf interacted with a fan, and he is now being disciplined for it.
DK was suspended for 2 games for I don't know if you call it necessarily a punch, but shoved up a fan that was in the front row. Apparently, this is a fan that he has a history with, and has called NFL security on once before in another game against the Lions. This is not the first interaction apparently with that fan. DK is going to appeal it and is apparently alleging that the person used some racist terminology.
Okay. Well, not good stuff all the way around there.
Nope.
But that video was making its way on social media when we were at the game, Coach. And a lot of people were like, whoa, what's going on here? And again, you never know the full story. A video just tells you part of it. But that's something that Pittsburgh will be dealing with, but doesn't really affect the Lions at this point.
Yep. It's bad all the way around.
All right, so what do we make of the Lions team right now? Again, we just came off of that loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's 2 games to go. James, get us started here.
The Lions are in desperation mode. I mean, their playoff chances went down to 17% with that loss. So that is not good. Their path comes by winning 2 games and then hoping for quite a bit of help from around the league. Basically, it requires the Bears and or Packers to both lose out. You know, one or the other at least has to pretty much lose out for the Lions to have any chances of getting in. But so they still have a chance. So they're not going to give up. Definitely that loss to Pittsburgh definitely made things a lot harder.
Yeah, actually, the Bears have already clinched a playoff spot.
Yes.
The Packers have to lose out.
That's right.
Yeah,
the Bears. Yeah.
So that does need to happen. I'm surprised it's even at 17. I thought I heard 6, but I know there's like multiple models out there. But basically, Packers got to lose, Lions got to win, and yeah.
Well, and the Packers play the Ravens and the Vikings, so I would think that the Lions and the Packers both should beat the Vikings, but I thought that the Lions should have beat the Steelers and the Packers would beat the Bears too.
And that the Lions would beat the Vikings the first time. So
yes.
Well, as we talked about in our last show, you guys, I think, what do I make of the Lions right now? They have moments of greatness, but too many more moments of being below average. And that's not just one or two people, it's a collective effort throughout the season. I think that's been a theme. They've done some things well, a variety of mistakes, miscues, and injuries have all played into this. We'll get into a lot of the season reflection as a whole later, but that's kind of where I'm seeing the Lions at right now. Coach, what do you got?
Yeah, it's same thing. I mean, we talk about splash plays on offense, and we're having splash plays on offense and defense, but we're not. It's not consistent enough, and it's cost us. We've given up big pass plays, big run plays, and turnovers and blocked field goals and stuff like that. And it's one of those ones when you look at it and you go, man, they look so good on. I was just listening to Dan Campbell, and he says it's all on him. So, sign of a great coach. Take it all on yourself and make sure you talk about it in the locker room, which I know he is.
All right. Well, if you were to look at the division standings right now, you would see the last place team from last year is currently in first place. The third place team is currently in second place, and the first and second place teams are one game apart. It's almost a mere opposite of last year. There's two games left. We kind of went over what's at stake, but the Bears are at the 49ers this week. The Packers host the Ravens, and then the Lions are traveling to Minnesota for that Christmas Day matchup. No transactions have come up because, well, those will probably happen like on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon or evening, or who knows what will happen or if any will take place. But we have the first injury report out. James, let's start with the Lions here on the injury report. We have three no practices, which is Taylor Decker, Avonte Maddox, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Three guys who were in the game yesterday. Limited practices, that it's like, I don't know, half the starting lineup, it seems like. But let's focus on those no practices, James. Taylor Decker's shoulder, not a shock, needing some rest. We got Avonte Maddox and Amon-Ra St. Brown on there.
Yeah, and Monday was just a walkthrough too, so these are just estimates. They
Right.
didn't hold a padded practice on Monday with the short week. Yeah, the limited guys are Cologne, Davenport, Glasgow, Kennedy, Mahogany, Manu, McNeil, Muhammad, Robertson. So a lot of guys who played last week, a lot of guys who played through injuries already last week. So a lot of them not really a surprise on there, although Marcus Davenport is a new one that popped up.
It is. And then Christian Mahogany, from some beat writers wrote, was seen limping in the locker room after the game. It was obviously his first game back from injury. Um, Coach, what's jumping out to you or anything catching your eye on this estimated practice report for a walkthrough?
Not much. I mean, I was listening to Dan Campbell about it. Mahogany, that's going to be something, dude. You just come off an injury, and now all of a sudden you're going full bore into a game. Um, Saint, the knee, I remember seeing it. He kind of came up limping, I think, after one of his big catches, that big, I think it was a big screenplay. I was like, oh, he didn't look like he got up right. And then, of course, didn't see anything rest of the game. And then, he showed up at practice today with a little bit of knee. They weren't too worried about it, but yeah, short week. You're going to limit guys. You're not going to walk around. Some of those guys might be in ice baths today, trying to get their bodies right from playing a pretty rough game yesterday. So, again, we'll figure it out 1 hour and 50 minutes or 1 hour and a half before game time on Christmas.
For sure. And, the Lions are not the only ones with a practice report or injury report for practice week 17. The Vikings also have one, and they have a number of no practices. That includes TJ Hawkinson, Ryan Kelly, Jordan Mason, JJ McCarthy, and Brian O'Neill. And then a number of guys listed as limited participants. There's just a couple. Aaron Jones and Javon Hargrave. Um, James, what do you got on this?
Well, McCarthy, Mason, and Kelly were all hurt last week,
Mhm.
and left the games. McCarthy hurt his throwing hand in the game when then they came over, they looked at him, they looked at the hand, you could see him wince in pain, and then they took him to the locker room and initially declared him as out, I think, for a while, before he kind of came back onto the sidelines. So that doesn't sound good for a quarterback. So I think it's probably at best 50-50 that he plays this week, being on such a short week. So if I'm the Lions, I'm not planning on him playing, but obviously you have to count on having it ready for. You've already seen him once this year, so you know what he can do, and he did it pretty well. that week against the Lions. Hasn't really replicated that a whole lot since, but he was pretty successful against the Detroit Lions.
All right. And I believe they said the x-rays were negative on his hand. And again, more information will come out as the week goes on with that. Coach, anything else on the injury report stuff before we get to the preview?
Well, the three guys that put a hurt on us, Greenyard, the first game, Metellus and Darasol, of course, have been thrown on IR since the last time we played those guys. So, that's kind of a big one, and especially Greenyard because he raised some havoc against us last time. But
Yeah,
again, I don't, the Lions, I'm sure they're looking at that and they're like, we don't really care who they got playing. We have to be us.
for sure. All right, well, let's turn to the game at hand preview. Here is my interview with Ren Clayton, sports anchor and reporter out of Minnesota. Here's that interview. Joining me today is Ren Clayton, sports anchor and reporter for WCCO TV, the CBS affiliate out of Minneapolis. He's covered the Vikings for multiple seasons, and we're lucky enough to have him here to help Lions fans understand a little bit more about this Viking squad that they're going to face this week. Ren, thanks again for taking the time and joining the show today.
Happy holidays. Thanks for having me.
Happy holidays to you. And I gotta just say, every time we get together and we talk about the Lions and Vikings, we think we have an idea of how things are gonna go or how things are gonna look. And then there's almost like a bunch of 180s that happen and a lot of unexpected things that take place.
It's true. I mean, I was talking about it last time, like leading up to their first game this season, and I'm very negative about how they're playing, and it was a surprise win. But I will say, maybe my negativity regarding the team as a whole panned out as it went from there. If we just want to look at the Vikings as a whole, but yeah, who knows what happens this Thursday?
Well, we haven't spoken since that first Lions Vikings game. Just what was your reaction watching the game and just kind of analyzing it afterwards?
It sort of it made you think, and I think a lot of people within the organization, like, what could have been. It was sort of like what they wanted, the ideal scenario they were planning for before the season started, before the games actually started being played. A lot of things went right for the Vikings, and you saw some of the potential of the players, the offensive players specifically that they have, but just hadn't been showing to that date. And maybe we've seen a little bit more of that now, maybe not. We'll see.
All right. Well, you already alluded to it. After that victory by the Vikings over the Lions, they hit a 4-game skid, but they're now on a 3-game winning streak. And I know we'll talk about the caveat of JJ McCarthy's status and stuff, but during that 3-game winning streak, what's been the difference with this Viking squad?
Well, since you mentioned McCarthy, they kind of went back to stop. They basically told him stop worrying about all the the fundamentals that we wanted you to change entering the year. Just go back to doing whatever you was theoretically working for you in college, which was now a while away since that was happening, and it seems like it has lightened him up a little bit. Maybe taking some of the mental toll off him and all the processing that he has to do as an NFL quarterback, and then another part of it is they have played some much lesser teams. So let's be honest. Defenses continue to play well like they have pretty much all year, with some exceptions. But yeah, it's been JJ McCarthy kind of going much simpler with just everything as far as what he's asked to do, what he's asked to process, and just kind of go sling it a little bit.
So with that, I don't know, reversal of coaching or just adjustment that we've seen, what are your thoughts on JJ's play in the limited action you've seen, and what is the fan base kind of thinking about him as being the guy in 2026?
The fan base, I would say, is still very much it's up in the air, and I think that's probably very fair because, like I said, yeah, they played the Commanders. They're playing the New York Giants this past week, two of the very worst teams in the NFL. It's hard to really get a good gauge now when he makes big plays or he runs in for a touchdown like he did scrambling on Sunday. Things like that are highlights and shows some of his potential for some of the intangibles, maybe the playmaking, the making plays when they're not necessarily presented in front of him. And those are good things, obviously, that you want in an NFL quarterback. But as far as next year, it's very much up in the air. Hopefully, they can see what he has, a little bit more, as much as they can, as this season winds down. That's what they need. The front office and the coaches need all the information they can gather before they maybe make a decision or some semblance of a decision entering next season.
All right. Well, you said some of the opponents have been playing have been a little bit lesser. The offensive numbers in general haven't been great for the Vikings this year. The defense has carried the team a little bit more, as you've alluded to as well. But right now, what has been working the best for the offense? What's been going well for them, or what's keeping them in games?
I think it kind of starts with the offensive line. I think that Washington game, they finally had a fully healthy offensive line entering the game and ending the game, which hadn't been the case all season. That they had entered a game with fully healthy for like one game, and then it didn't end that way. Now, I will say, since then, there's been some injuries. Christian Darrisaw went on the injured reserve. He's been dealing with that knee recovery, some other things. And once the playoffs were out of consideration, some different players have been going on the injured reserve, actually on both sides of the ball. And so, yeah, it starts with the offensive line. They've leaned on the run game just a tad more, and it's been JJ McCarthy making just playing better. I'll say that, since what we talked about before, a simpler game plan. But he has played significantly better against sometimes less of a pass rush, which helps a lot. He tends to get some quick feet, some happy feet when the pocket breaks down, and when it doesn't, you can tell that he's a little bit more comfortable and able to get through at least a couple of the reads. I think those are the big differences. Last week against the Giants, finally Justin Jefferson had his best game since early October. Really, those are like two of his three maybe good, you could call, games, great games. He's been quiet all year. He's had some weird drops, but for the most part, he just hasn't been found by the quarterback play, even though clearly he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So that's a big difference. Obviously, Justin Jefferson has to be a big centerpiece of your offense if you have him on your team.
Yeah, well, you hit on a couple pieces I want to talk about there. JJ McCarthy wasn't asked to make a lot of throws against the Lions in their first matchup. They were on short fields a lot, but he made the throws he needed to make in crucial moments in that game. And so he did perform when needed. Now, there's a chance that he might not be available for Thursday's game. He didn't practice on Monday. The Tuesday practice report's not out yet. If he's not able to go, I believe Max Brosmer is going to be the guy in there. What can you tell us about Max?
Max is a great guy. We've known him since a year ago plus, when he got to town, transferred from New Hampshire to the University of Minnesota for his fifth season. He joined the Big Ten. He had a pretty successful season with the Gophers, and he's just been a kind of fairy tale story, right? A college product from the big school here in town, just down the road, to go to Egan and won a job when no one thought he would win a job with the Minnesota Vikings, the hometown team. His first debut, when McCarthy was out for, I guess, the second time, when Carson Wentz was already out. It's hard to keep track of all the quarterback movings and shakings, but yeah, he played against Seattle, and it was a disaster. I think the play that everybody remembers was when he just heaved it up when he was about to be sacked, and served it up for a big pick six. It was an abject disaster, and really kind of uncharacteristic from what we had seen from Brosmer in college. But it's the NFL; it's a completely different beast. He did come in relief, played the second half this past Sunday, albeit against the Giants. It's not a very good team, but he looked a lot better. Didn't impress, like he didn't blow the doors off of anything. He was good, passable, didn't turn the ball over. That's a good thing, right?
Yep.
If Brosmer plays, which it looks like that could be very well the case, we don't I expect simple, like we mentioned before, run the ball, and see what he can do. They don't have high hopes for him as far as like the quarterback of the future, but he could be the backup of the future, and who knows, maybe that forays into something a few years more down the road. I don't think he's like an option as far as the Vikings are looking for a quarterback battle next year, but a different look at quarterback. They really like. It was a funny, Brian O'Neill, the right tackle, said after the game, since now he's been in a few games with Max Brosmer, he says he brings a very light presence to the huddle, even when he's thrust into action, midway through the game. He said he'd never had a quarterback like that, just kind of a relaxed, chill guy, if you want to call it that, in the huddle while he's calling the plays. Still commanding and stuff, but it's a different atmosphere, a different vibe he puts out. We'll see how that plays out.
All right. Well, yeah, it sounds like, he has made some improvements from that first NFL experience. Let's move over to the receiving core a minute because you did talk about Justin Jefferson. His numbers are not surprisingly different than last year, right? He doesn't have Sam Darnold throwing him the ball. He's had three different quarterbacks throwing him the ball. What jumps out to me the most is he's got 2 touchdown catches at this point in the
Is
season.
that low? My goodness, that's bad.
I know. I mean, 72 receptions, 900 yards. He still can get to the 90,000 yard thing, which, again, big regression from last year. But how's the receiving core been handling it with all these different, quarterbacks taking snaps under center?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison have had really weird years. The two top receivers. It's been up and down for all of them. Even the number three, Jalen Naylor, a couple weeks ago had a really good game, probably career game, and then last week he was terrible. 2 drops, could have led to 2 interceptions, did lead to one. The other interception was called back. So yeah, it's been weird. Part of that is because the drops, which all three have had drops this year, more drops by Justin Jefferson than we'd ever thought we would ever see, and then Jordan Addison has had some brutal drops this year as well, including last week when it looked like he had the touchdown and he was in the end zone on his back with the ball, and then it just rolled off his belly essentially. Some really weird drops by Jordan Addison, but I will say some of the drops, now all the receivers would say they should have all of them. Some of the drops were because JJ McCarthy's throwing the ball too hard on some of these like slant routes and crossing routes. He guns the ball like Brett Favre sometimes, and I don't think the receivers are still used to it yet. That's partially part of it for some of those. I will say some other ones are odd, but yeah, a lot of it just comes back to the quarterbacking. I mean, Justin Jefferson, we all know, is an elite talent. Jordan Addison, I think, is really, really good, and he's probably a little still under the radar just for how good he can be as a route runner and just a receiver in general. But it does come back to the quarterbacking play. There's been some crazy overthrows that we've seen over the course of the year, and some frustration by the receivers because of that. Though they've to their credit, they've kind of said all the right things when some of the receivers might not have.
All right. Well, that's important to keep a receiving group together like that. We spent a lot of time on the offense. Let's jump over to the defense. It's relentlessness is their reputation. There have been some injuries, though, on the defense as the year has progressed. What do they look like at this point?
Well, it's interesting. Those injuries get more and more severe as the team doesn't have playoff hopes. I wonder if that's a coincidence or not. Yeah. Entering last week, Josh Metellus, kind of one of the captains, a safety slash linebacker slash do it all guy. He went on the injured reserve. He'd had a nagging shoulder, and that's why he went on the injured reserve. He would have definitely played through it, and I think he would even admit that if they were in the race. Same with Jonathan Grenard. He'd been dealing with an injury. He's on the injured reserve. And so, yeah, probably more will go on before Christmas's game. But they have been very good all year, with some exceptions. But for the most part, they've been what's kept Minnesota to having as respectable of a record as they may have, even though it's not great. Dallas Turner, I think, is a fun guy to watch. He's in at outside linebacker for Jonathan Grenard. Just if you want to just hone in on one guy on defense and just watch him play football, he's fun. He's super quick, super athletic. Second-year guy out of Alabama, and ceiling's really high for him. So watch him rush the quarterback, see if he can get to Jared Goff this game. But just overall, it's been good from the secondary down to the line. Jalen Redmond, I think, is probably a guy I've mentioned before on the defensive line, just a breakout star after some of the defensive linemen that they signed in free agency, the bigger names, didn't really pan out as well. It's just been pretty solid team defense, and maybe the last addition these next couple games, because it'd be hard to believe that Brian Flores wouldn't get a head coaching job in this offseason, and that could be a big shakeup for the Vikings.
I think most Lions fans are hoping he gets that promotion,
Mhm.
because it is a formidable defense. And, it was week 18 last year. You and I were having a very different conversation. Both teams were 14-2 looking for that division title. Well, here we are with 2 weeks left in the season. The fourth place Bears are now the first place Bears. The third place Packers are the second place Packers. The Lions and Vikings are only one game apart from third and fourth place at this point, which again is basically a complete flip of last year. It's just a reminder of how quickly things can change in the NFL.
Why do you think it changed so much for the Lions? Is it just injuries and the coordinators going?
I think the biggest thing, the number one big thing for me is the offensive line.
Yeah.
Because with a strong offensive line, the Lions can run the ball more effectively. They can control the clock. That is the biggest thing to me. I do think that the injuries in the secondary played a role, and as well. But I think to me, it's the biggest thing is the offensive line. And I'm not going to take out the coordinators. That does impact things as well. But I think if you could just change one thing, the offensive line, the Lions might have 2 more wins this season.
Well, how has the offensive play calling, has it been noticeably different? Obviously, I know Dan Campbell took over.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It seemed to be more fluid since he's taken over. Now, they continued going back and forth playing about 500 football, but that wasn't due to the offensive play necessarily, because
Yeah.
the offense was putting up more points and doing
Yeah.
better. I also think that they haven't had the personnel. The tight ends getting hurt, I guess, on the offensive line really changed the way they like to play the offense as well. So it's not just your offensive linemen, but those lack of tight ends has not allowed them to do the type of football they want to.
It is crazy just how it can flip. Like these two teams, like you mentioned now, are fighting for not to be in last place versus the complete opposite last year. Even though it's still like objectively a somewhat good division, it's not like the best division in football like we thought it would be entering the year.
No, but also you look at the other conferences and divisions the NFC North has played. It's different than the NFC West, because last year the North had an easier schedule. This
Yeah.
year the West gets it. So,
True. True.
all right. Well, if the Minnesota Vikings are going to win this game against the Detroit Lions, what do they have to do?
They got to stop the run. I mean, I don't know how they do that, but you got to stop the run. Jahmyr Gibbs is maybe one of the most fun players to watch in all of football, scooting around. And when the Vikings have really struggled, is they've given up big games to star running backs. We saw it as early as week 2. I think Bijan Robinson just was unstoppable, and that's happened multiple times with other running backs throughout this season. Even yet last week, Tyron Tracy started to have a really good game, and there was spurts where the Vikings defense had a lot of trouble stopping him. So if they're going to win, which I think they could, they got to throttle down the run game. You mentioned maybe the offensive line isn't as dominant as they once were in Detroit, but the Vikings really have got to stop it up front, and that could be their path to victory on Christmas.
Well, they held the Lions to 65 yards rushing in that first contest, and
Yeah.
and people thought that might be a season low, but against Pittsburgh, the Lions rushed for 15 yards.
That's not good.
No, that's not good. All right. Well, conversely, maybe it's just run the ball well, but what do the Lions need to do, in your opinion, to beat the Vikings in this game?
Since we mentioned that, I'll flip it to the other side. Just get to the quarterback, and I think that's not the toughest task necessarily when you have one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. The Vikings, as I mentioned before, have that offensive line that's good when they're healthy, maybe, but they're not healthy now. Their left tackle's gone. The third concussion of the year now for their center, Ryan Kelly. He won't play. Yeah, it's been a leaky offensive line, and it likely will be again. If the Lions can get a few sacks, maybe they can get a whole bunch of sacks. That's the easy path to victory, I think.
All right. Well, this is going to be the final time we speak this year. So, any final thoughts, any predictions on this game or the offseason, just anything going forward?
Let's talk about the Bears. No, I'm just kidding. This whole last chapter of the season for the Vikings is really all about seeing what they have at quarterback, and then going into the offseason, seeing what quarterbacks are out there if that's a route they want to take. So really that's the lens with which I'm looking at these Vikings games, this one on Christmas and the next one in week 18. What do you have? What do you know you have? What do you think you have? And just how is the quarterback situation panning out for the Vikings? And that's the thing worth watching, right? Because they're not going to the playoffs. You're not looking at, who they might play, how they're, rounding into form. So that's the big question. They have a decent team around the quarterback position, but we don't know still who's the QB and what he will be, whoever it is. So that's what I'm watching for, and it's an interesting story across the NFL. Any NFL fan should be watching that just out of curiosity, I think.
Yeah, there are a lot of exciting games going on these last 2 weeks. It's hard to believe how fast the season comes. It's always so much fun, so much anticipation, but time flies when you're having a good time, even if it's not a 14 or 15 win season.
14 or 15 wins is a rare feat, and maybe few and far between for any team. But yeah, we shall see as we turn the page to the next year.
All right, Ren, thanks again so much for taking time to preview the game. It's always fun talking football with you.
Yeah, you as well. Have a good holidays.
You as well. Thanks, Ren. Again, great info as usual from Ren. Want to give him a big thank you for all the time he's contributed this year with both game previews as well as the season preview. Always enjoy conversation with him as well as his insights on the Vikings. It's just big getting insight from guys who cover this team. They're in the locker rooms. They're interacting with these players on a regular basis. So, all right, guys, what are we making out of this Vikings team? A team that took the Lions by surprise or what happened coming out of that bye week. But now they're a team trying to learn more about their quarterback, but he got hurt again in the last game. And so he was knocked out of that. So they're a team that, as you know, Coach brought up, they've got some guys on injured reserve as well. They're at 7-8, though. They put a couple wins together. They're not folding on their season, James.
No, they've actually put a pretty good run here on since the Lions. I mean, everybody considered this to be a horrible, horrible loss, which it was when the Lions lost to them. But they've put a pretty decent run together here. They beat the Giants last week, who are not a great team, but Jackson Dart has been a pretty good quarterback for them. They beat Dallas the week before. They beat Washington. So they've had three pretty good weeks here in a row. They've won, I think, four of their last five too, because they beat the Packers in there once, and then they got shut out by the Seahawks in that.
Actually, it looks like they lost 4 in a row after the Lions,
Yes,
and then they've won
two.
3 straight.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
after you were wondering how did the Lions lose to them after they go on that losing
That's right.
streak?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. They've gotten hot. They beat the Commanders 31-0, and then they've gone on a roll. So they're not giving up. They're going to be a team to reckon with.
Yeah, and they've put up over 30 in two of those three games in the last 2 weeks. The Giants have a pretty solid defense. Their offense has struggled this year because a lot of their injuries are on that side of the ball, especially their wide receivers and running backs. But the Giants defense is still pretty solid this year, so not surprising that Minnesota didn't put up as much as they did against Dallas and Washington, who we've seen do not have great defenses.
Yeah, and whenever JJ McCarthy's not in there, that also changes things as well. Coach, what do you make of the Vikings right now? They've had an interesting season.
KO and Flores, their head coach and their defense coordinator. They're gonna compete no matter what. And they came out with a great game plan against us last time. I'll go over a few of those things. But and again, you're looking at another team that they won 3 in a row. We've lost 2 in a row. And there's guys that are playing for contracts right now, and you got to say it. It's a business now, it's the love of the game, and so they're gonna come out, they're gonna play hard. Plus they're home, and they're gonna want to show their home crowd. And I was there last week, for that All-Star game, and what a great facility. I was looking for the big bugle or whatever they call that, and saw that up there and stuff like that. So yeah, we got our hands full.
All right. Well, what are we going to expect out of Minnesota coming into Detroit? I think some of that's going to depend on if JJ McCarthy is playing or not. And again, by the time this airs, we might already know that answer. But James, what are you expecting out of the Vikings in this game? Where a game they have a chance to become 500 and be 8-8 if they can win.
Yeah, so they've got things to play for too. I mean, the playoffs isn't one of them, but they're looking to finish 500 or better. get back to 500 in this game and win the last game of the season to finish over 500, get some momentum for next season too. And like Coach said, yeah, a lot of guys playing for contracts and and the Lions looking at a lot of those guys to see, okay, do we bring these guys back? If so, how much can we afford to bring some of these guys back for, like an Alex Anzalone? He's a free agent after this year, and the Lions are going to have to make a tough decision on him. So, these last couple games and how he looks could play a factor into that. I think that the Vikings will try to establish the run game and run a lot, regardless of JJ McCarthy's status. They're not going to want him to throw the ball a million times if he's playing with a bad hand, and if he's not playing, they're not going to want a third string quarterback because their second stringer is out for the season too, to have to throw the ball 40 or 50 times either.
Yeah, I mean the Vikings offense is 26th in the NFL in points scored, you guys, 28th with yards allowed.
Hmm.
The defense, I mean, we know how formidable that defense is. They're 12th in points allowed, fifth in yards allowed, coach. So the defense is a big reason why they have kept the record they have. And we saw with those recent wins, they shut out the Commanders and they held the Giants to 13. So, what are you expecting out of the Vikings, coach?
Well, I mean, let's go with the first game. First game, the defensive game plan they had against us was incredible. They stressed our offensive line. They registered 20 pressures, had 5 sacks on 37 dropbacks. So 25 times Goff had somebody in his face or somebody putting him on his back. Their key again was to stop Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think those are, they're gonna keep that same defensive scheme together. And Flores is going to tweak some things on that. He's going to tweak it. We had we had missed assignments, we had a blocked field goal, we had turnovers, and again their offense had short field drives, right? You guys opening,
Yeah.
I think they had a big kickoff return against us, right after we scored a touchdown, 35-yard drive or something like that. And JJ made that count. They had another short. I can't remember what the other one was. Probably a turnover, another short drive. I think they had 3 touchdowns of, I don't know, 36 yards, 38 yards, maybe something like that.
They had short fields all
Yeah,
day
they
long.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just had a ton of missed assignments. I think that was Cologne's first start, maybe somebody's first start. That they just I don't remember what it. I mean, I remember talking about it going, oh my God. So, but who cares? Detroit right now, the Lions, Dan Campbell, they don't care what they got, what they did. It's all about us. It has nothing to do with scheme. I didn't even go through and start looking at they did this again. They're bad against the pass. They're terrible against the run. They can't stop a third down because I went through all that stuff last week, and every one of those things I talked about last week, they did the best they've ever done. And I think that's what the Vikings did against us. And this was one of our worst games we played all year against the Vikings. And that's going to be something we're gonna want to try to change. And again, we go back to as a player, you're going to look back at that game and go, I got beat by him 7 times. I'm not going to get beat by him this week. So that's what I'm looking for with the Lions.
Well, and one of the mantras of the Lions has been hunting season this year.
Yes.
And we know that every team has been hunting the Lions this year. I mean, they wanted to, right? Because when you go 15-2 and you go undefeated in your division, it makes sense that you're going to have people wanting to beat you and bring their best, is what I'm getting to. And the Lions have been taking a lot of the best shots. There's something to be said for that. Every time you go on the field, people are bringing everything. And you're like, well, don't they do that every game? Yeah, but, right? Like, there is that thing. So I think they're going to get the Vikings' best shot again because, like you said, Coach, their coaches will have them ready to play. It'll be a very tall task for the Vikings if JJ McCarthy's not in there, but they're being told by their coaches, hey, we beat them before in their house. We've got our house to protect. And by the way, guys, we can still finish with a winning record. And so, again, it's a long task for the Vikings to finish with a winning record this year, but it can still happen. So, James, anything else to expect out of the Vikings before we jump over to what we expect out of the Lions?
Well, I think that they did start with short fields. I think all three of their scores were possessions where they started inside Lions territory, either due to a return or a turnover or something. So, I mean, JJ McCarthy didn't even throw for 200 yards in that game, and that's considered one of his best games this season. So I think that says quite a bit. So the Lions defense overall in that game did not play poorly, but they did not get put in good positions either.
All right. I echo those thoughts. I second those emotions. Folks, another thing I want to second to you is our announcement that Roaster Jack Coffee Company out of Traverse City is bringing this episode to you. They've been doing this since 1999. And if you would like a discount on some great coffee, go to roasterjack.com. Use the code LIONS. You get 20% off your next order. All right, what do we expect out of the Lions? Well, I think Dan Campbell hit the nose on the head or the nail on the head or whatever it is. Uh, Two things. One, they're playing for identity. They're trying to get their identity back. But also, he talked about the last game being so much about self-induced problems, which led to those short fields you guys talked about. And he goes, if we can just not do that, then we can figure out how we're going to play the Minnesota Vikings. But we got to figure out how to get out of our own way first. And so I think that's what I'm going to put out there first is I expect the Lions to try and play fundamentally sound. I don't know if that means you simplify certain things with different guys out there. I know a number of starters are missing, but you have to not give up the explosives and again, play fundamentally sound and do your jobs. Coach, what are you looking at from the Lions team here?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I think your offensive line is going to be established, and they need to, they need to play their best games, every one of them. I mean, even Sewell, I don't think Sewell played very well last week. I mean, I shouldn't say that's hard to say. He didn't play up to his standards, in the Lions standards on what he's put on the board. If he grades out 88%, well, he's been grading out in the mid 90s by, people all year. And so those are things that you're going to see. You're going to see that with whoever plays at center. You're going to see Decker. They're all going to step up. They're going to be hurting from this. It's a short week. So the biggest thing is getting their health. It's going to be about mental health, their minds right and their bodies right. And because of the short week and doing their jobs, not missing an assignment. Again, last time we played these guys, we had a bunch of missed assignments. This time we're not going to have those. We had a bunch of missed assignments last game. We should not have those. If we just get better, if we get better, 50% better, 60% better over that game, we should be in good shape. If we chew off some kneecaps, then we should have a great game.
All right. James, I think Coach wants some of those Billy Sims barbecue ribs you were talking about because he's talking food language over there.
Mhm.
What are you expecting out of the Lions?
What I hope is that they don't give them the short fields that they did last time around. So in the last game against the Vikings, here's their scoring drives: 36 yards, 64 yards, 41, 35, and 24 yards.
Wow.
So only one drive over 41 yards.
Yeah.
So the defense didn't play bad. They were put in bad spots. Their return game, I think, was pretty good that game, and that set them up for one or two of those. And there was some turnovers in there too, with the Lions. And then it was one of those games where I think people were starting to realize that the Lions' offensive line is not what it was the years before.
Yeah.
And there was going to be growing pains with the offensive line this year, with young guys in the middle, with moving Glasgow, with losing Ragnow at the last minute. There was going to be some kind of decline, but it's been a lot more than I think people expected, and we had hoped that we would see a little more maturation from the young guys at this point. And they still will get better. They should. They all had the good pedigree, but haven't seen the results from that yet.
All right. Well, let's hit on other storylines. Anything unexpected? At 8-7, guys, the Lions need to win one of their final two games to have a winning record this season. Coach, we've kind of talked about this before, but I want to ask you again, just straight up: does finishing 9-8 versus 8-9 matter for a football team?
Huge, huge, huge mindset, huge going in the off season. How about this? How many winning seasons have we had in a row so far? Three?
Right. Does it matter to go from 3 to 4? And
Yep.
is that big psychologically?
Yep. I think it's huge psychologically. And that's all psychologically for the Lions organization, right? How many times have we had 4 years in a row where we had a winning record?
I think
I
the
went
answer is never.
never. I went back and looked at it. I mean, I have 1953, 54, 50, something like that. Went back and looked at it. I was kind of, how many times do we have winning records back to back in the Lions organization?
Not
I mean,
recently.
guys, you go back and look at it. I was
Before,
looking at it
yeah.
today, and so not just that, but the organization saying, yeah, we were 9-8, after we turned it around second year, Dan Campbell. Then we went to that, we almost made it to the Super Bowl. Then last year we won 15 games. It's huge. It's huge. It's that. Oh my God, things aren't going right, but can we make them right? So, yeah, and here's the other thing. I'm going to bring up I had a team, when I was at Traverse City West, and I'm gonna bring this up because it's very important. And that team, when we had the sophomores, I think we had 4 sophomores playing on that team, and we were trying to get into the playoffs that year with these sophomores. There might have been 5 of them up because we knew by the time that they were senior years, and it was a stepping stone. Get in the playoffs your sophomore year. We didn't win. Junior year, well, we got into the playoffs. Now we're going to win a couple games. Senior year, we were in the playoffs last year. We won a couple games. This year, we're going to win it all. That sophomore year, we didn't get into the playoffs. The next year, we got into the playoffs and lost. The senior year of that group, that was 10-0, which we knew was going to be good, got into the playoffs and won the first game and then lost the second game to Rockford, of course. And it changed the whole schedule up from what we as a coaching staff were looking at. And so this is a huge game for us. Huge game for us.
All right. And you talked about, they've got 3 winning seasons in a row,
Mhm.
not 4. If you go back under Jim Caldwell, who was a Lions head coach for 4 seasons,
Mhm.
3 of his 4 seasons were winning
Yeah.
seasons. He was fired after a winning season, and he had one season where he was 7-9. So if they go 4 in a row, that would be the first time in franchise history to do that. So, but yeah, appreciate the insight on the psychology behind that and whatnot. James, anything else on storylines, unexpected stuff?
I mean, to piggyback on what Coach said, with the winning record. Conversely, you're going to hear everybody talk next year about not having a winning record. It will be the talk of going from a 15 win team to only 8 win team, almost half. So you don't want that. You don't want that kind of bad juju surrounding your team going into the season. Maybe it would light a fire, but you kind of don't want to have to light that fire. You hope that it's still going from having a winning record. So, yeah, I think it is big to win these last couple of games, even if they're not going to make the playoffs. And that road is not easy. So, I think they have to finish here on a good note. Maybe get some of those younger guys some work while doing it a little bit more and go into next season, fix some of these things, get healthy again, and make another run at it next year.
All right. Well, there is no ref report being released yet. It is a short week. So, what's it going to take for the Lions to win? I think a healthier offensive line would be a easy answer, but good luck on a short week getting that to happen. So, I'm just going to say I'd like to see different personnel used on offense. I mean, at some point, I should just hit play and repeat on things here. But I want Monty and Gibbs on the field at the same time. That's what will it take? It will take that. I guess that can be a prediction or a desire. It's going to take what Campbell said. No self-induced problems. They did a great job of not turning the ball over against the Steelers. There were a couple that were close, and they did get a takeaway. I think you want to get a takeaway or two, avoid turning it over, and figure out how to not have a bad run defense, because whatever happened last week is not what we've seen for most of the season, and I think it's going to have to not happen again 2 weeks in a row if they want to get rid of this 2-game losing streak. Coach, what's it going to take for the Lions to win?
Getting our identity back. That's it. I'm just getting our identity back. The X's, the O's. It's not about the X's and O's right now. It's about the Jimmy and the Joes. And we have Jimmy and Joe's, and they have to play to the best of their ability. And I think that's the recipe for this win.
All right. And what do you got here, James, for what's it going to take for the Lions to win before we get into predictions?
The Lions got to be able to run the ball in this game. That was one of the things that they couldn't do the last time against the Vikings. Gibbs ran for 25 and Montgomery ran for 40. I think it's maybe the only game this season where Montgomery got more carries than Gibbs. And but Montgomery also fumbled. That was one of those big plays that gave Minnesota a short field. The Lions have to be able to run the ball, take some pressure off of Jared Goff, and just let him be more Jared Goff and not have to worry about a team that can just only rush the passer, and send as many blitzes as Flores loves to do. You can blunt that with a good run game.
Mhm.
Right. Well, let's go to prediction time then. Coach, what do you got in this one?
Well, I'm going to say we're going to keep JJ in check. And the prediction is it's going to be my favorite Christmas present on Christmas Day.
All right. I am not going to predict the Lions will wear blue and silver jerseys because A, it didn't happen last week. I was wrong. Maybe that should be B. A is they're on the road, so you don't do that stuff. And C, I think it's already been announced what they're wearing, though I'm not quite sure. So I'm not going with that prediction. James, I'm gonna pivot to you and maybe come back and try and come up with something here.
I'm going to say the Lions do not get called for an offensive pass interference in this game. Uh,
At least not twice in the final 5 plays.
Not twice in the fourth quarter, both negating touchdowns, which has never happened in the NFL before. Yeah, that was just bizarre. You know what? Just to change the mojo, I'm going to say the Vikings win this game. How about that? Just to
Oh,
just to mess with things and hope that I'm wrong, and then people can just give me crap. I don't care. So I'm just
all
going to
right.
say that so that it won't happen.
Okay. Well, I was going to predict that Jameson Williams will go over 1,000 yards receiving for the second season in a row, but he apparently did that in the last game, guys. He hit 1,006 yards in that loss against the Steelers. So that's 2 seasons with him with 1,000 yards. Um, I don't have a really good prediction. I'm going to go on Aiden Hutchinson. He got 2 sacks the last game against Pittsburgh. We didn't really talk about that. I'm going to predict that Hutch gets a sack in this game, and we'll chalk one up for defensive pass rush. We'll see if that can happen. So, nothing too outlandish. Final thoughts, though. I'm going to say the Lions' defense is now playing worse than that 2023 defense, you guys. They are now 23rd in points allowed and 24th in yards allowed. Their offense is no longer the number 1 offense in the NFL. I do think if that touchdown had stood, they would still be number 1. It's funny how that works, but those are my final thoughts for this. Just another stat out there. Coach, anything left you got?
So you say there's a chance.
There you go. All right. I hope you get that Christmas present you want, Coach. I think that would be a fun one. It would be nice to have them, playoffs or not this year, know that they would have a winning season for the 4th time in a row, something no Lions fan ever has been able to say. James?
I'm all good. I already did mine.
All right. Well, then there we go. Those are our final thoughts, folks. I guess our last one is a collective shout out to Roaster Jack Coffee Company, roasted incredible beans since 1999. If you go to their website, roasterjack.com, you use the code LIONS, you get 20% off your next order. They got a special holiday blend out there right now, folks. Check that one out. Thank you for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about the show. You can find us on social media like Twitter, as well as other major streaming platforms. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Have a Merry Christmas, and until next time, stay gritty, my friends.